Welcome grade 7 to another math video and actually our very next unit in math. As we're going to take a look at coordinates and linear graphs, we're going to take a look at graphing systems and how they all work. So for any of you who have worked with graphs before, hopefully this will make a lot of sense. For those of you who don't worry or stress about it. We're going to step through it together here. And chances are you might already know a little bit about graphs or coordinate systems, especially if you've played the game Battleship. Now, in the game Battleship, it works at putting your battleships in certain positions, as well as someone else doing the same thing. And then you call out a letter and a number, and you match them up to see whether it's been a hit or whether it's been a miss in order to try to sink the opponent's ships and hopefully they miss all of yours. What you've really been doing is using a coordinate system in order to figure out where those ships are. So this here we call a Cartesian coordinate system. And it uses all sorts of numbers for us to be able to pinpoint where something is. We have numbers that we say are our x numbers, and those are any numbers that go left or right. So you see our x-axis, that's just the name of a line here that goes across left or right. X tells us how far left or right something might be, and y tells us how far up or down something might be. So before we get confusing and talk about these other three, let's just focus on this one right here. This coordinate plane here, and I have certain numbers here. Okay, so let's say I were to have a dot right here. Well, I want to be able to tell or to figure out where that dot is. And so what I do is I am going to give a coordinate for where that's going to be. And the coordinate system works this way, and that is that we give the x value first, so how far left or right it is first, and then we give the y value, which is how far up or down it is. And when we put these two together, we get what's called a coordinate here. So first, let's figure out how far it is left or right. So we want to match it up with this x line here. So we have 1. So basically anything that would be on this line here going across, that would be at 1. Next we have 2. And next we have 3. And if we see our dot going right from 0, which is right here, this is our kind of origin, we say, or our beginning, we have to go 2 spots to the right in order to get to where the dot is. Yes, I know it's not right on this line. We'll get to that in a minute. But what that means is my x value is 2. Now I want to figure out how far up or down this is going to be from this particular line. And so, again, like a grid, I have my 1, my 2, my 3 that are going to be here. And if I see going up, it's 1 up from the line. And so my y is at a value of 1. So this number here is actually called a coordinate to tell us exactly where that dot or that particular point is. Okay, let's try another point on this graph and let's see if we can figure that part out. Okay, so for this particular one, let's put our point right here. Okay, so we're getting a little bit trickier here. I'm in a whole different section now. Now, anytime for our x, to figure out how far left or right it is, anytime we are past this line, for this way past this line, then we are in a negative, or we're going left. Anytime we go left, we're going negative, or we're subtracting. So if we see how far, well, this would be -1 if it was on this line, -2 would be here, -3 would be here, and that's the line that it's on. So for this one, our x value is -3. Now, y is how far up or down it is based on this line. This is like our middle line here. Just like our x, this was our middle line. With our y, this is our middle line. So when we went up, it went 1, 2, 3, but now we actually have to go down. So we have -1, -2, and -3, and it's down -1. So -3, -1 would be where this particular point is going to be. I'm going to give you a coordinate, and I want you to try to think where this might be before I show where it's going to actually be on the grid or on the graph itself. What if I had the value of, let's say, 3 and -2. Where do you think that would be? Give you a quick second to think about it. Remember that the first number is how far left or right it is, and the second number is how far up or down it is. Okay, hopefully you gave it a little bit of thought and some time. It's over 3, so we start at the middle here. We go over 1, 2, 3 spots. Then we go down minus 2 spots, 1, 2, and we're left off right here. That's where our point is, 3 comma -2. That's where you hit that battleship, and that's where that particular coordinate is on this plane. Now, these special lines here, this is where the middle points are. So, for example, the reason why I have this line here, the x-axis, this is where my x numbers are, is because this is the separation point between the positive and negative y's. I know it's a little bit confusing that way. We talk about how like y goes kind of above and beyond it, and that separates the positives and the negatives for the y, but yet we call it the x-axis. The reason why we call it the x-axis is because this goes across from left to right, and our x values go across from left to right. So we call that the x-axis. Whereas this one, going up and down, we call that one the y-axis. And remember that in a coordinate system, we start with our x, and then following that is our y value. We also talk about these as being different quadrants. Now, the word quad just means 4, so we can separate this into 4 different sections. Starting with the first one here, so we would say that this is the first quadrant, and it encompasses all of this space here. And then we move our way around counterclockwise. So this would be our second quadrant. Everything in this spot here. This would be our third quadrant. And then this would be our fourth quadrant. So that's just one better way to be able to identify where certain things are within our Cartesian coordinate system. This is the end of our lesson, but now we're going to get into some of our example questions. So if you'd like to stick around to hear our example question, you're welcome to. If you'd like to take a look at it on your own, you're also welcome to do that too. So for our example question, and we only have one of them, we are given a Cartesian plane that has 0 here in the middle. It goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, -1, -1, -2, -3. Remember, we're negative because we're left of that line, and here also we're negative because we're below it. -3. Now mine might not be as spaced out perfectly. If you're using grid paper, great. You can have them spaced out a little bit better. We have an x here with a b value, we're told, and we also have one here with an a value. The first question asks us to state the coordinates of point A and B in this diagram. So let's start with A here. In order to figure out the coordinates of this value, I want to figure out some sort of x and y value. Okay, so some numbers to put in there. X, remember, is how far left or right it is. So if I'm starting here at 0, I can see that I have to go left instead of right, so I'm going to be negative, and I have to go 1, 2 spots to the left. So -2 to be lined up with that A. Next is my y value. That's how far up or down it's going to be. So starting here, I see I'm going up, so I'm going to be positive, and I'm going up 1 space. And when I go up that 1 space, it lines exactly up where that A is. And so 2, 1 is my coordinate for this particular point, point A. Point B, let's figure out the coordinates here. Point B, let's start with my x. I go over 1 to the right, so it's a +1. And I go 1, 2 down on my y value, so a -2. So here you see my 2 coordinates for point A and point B. Part B of this question asks us to state the quadrants in which A and B lie. Well, if you remember, this is our first quadrant here. Our first quadrant is always the one where both are positive, and then we go counterclockwise. So what that means is A is in our second quadrant, We don't have any in our third quadrant, and B is in our fourth quadrant. So when we're labeling that, that would be our values there. Our next question asks us to plot the points C at 2, 3, D at 0, 2, E at -3 and 0, and F at -2 and -3. So let's start with C, 2 and 3. So 2 on our X, 1, 2 on our X, and then 3 on our Y. 1, 2, 3 means those line up perfectly right here. So if you were to make a dotted line, you'd see it's on the 3, and that connects with the 2. So there's our point C. We can label that. D is at 0, which means we don't move left or right, and then up 2. So it's actually right on this line. So this is point D. Point E is at -3, 1, 2, 3, and 0. So I don't go up and down. I stay here on this line. That's point E. And then point F is at -2 and -3. So right down here, we line up with -2, we line up with -3, and that's our point F. So that would be how you would find some of these particular points within this particular graph for example 1.